Have you ever wondered why the Israel-Palestine conflict, a dispute that has lasted over a century, remains unresolved? This is not just a question of political disagreement or territorial claims. It's a complex web involving deep-seated historical, religious, and cultural differences. At the heart of this conflict are two key players, Israel and Palestine, both with strong and contrasting narratives, and the international community struggling to mediate and find a resolution. This conflict has taken a toll not only on the political landscape, but also on the common people, their lives caught in the crossfire of violence and turmoil. The human cost is staggering, with countless lives lost and communities torn apart. Children in areas like Gaza live under conditions that are far from ideal, their innocence marred by the harsh realities of war. To understand this perplexing conflict, it's essential to dive into its roots and trace its evolution. The seeds of the Israel-Palestine conflict were sown in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. During this era, two significant movements emerged, both fueled by a strong sense of nationalism and a yearning for a homeland. On one hand, Zionism, a Jewish nationalist movement, was rising. Its goal was to establish a Jewish state in Palestine, a land considered holy and ancestral by Jews worldwide. On the other hand, Arab nationalism was gaining momentum too. Arabs who had been living in Palestine for centuries saw Zionism as a threat to their identity and sovereignty. They began to rally for an independent Arab state in Palestine, setting the stage for a clash of nationalisms. In the midst of this brewing tension came the Balfour Declaration of 1917, a document issued by the British government expressing support for a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. This declaration, while promising to protect the civil and religious rights of the existing non-Jewish communities, sparked outrage and fear among the Arab populace. Following the Balfour Declaration, the British Mandate of Palestine was established in 1920. This mandate, given by the League of the Nations, granted Britain the responsibility to administer Palestine and establish the Jewish national home. However, the contradictory promises made to both Jews and Arabs during this period only served to deepen the resentment and mistrust between the two communities. The tensions reached a crescendo with the UN Partition Plan in 1947. This plan proposed the division of Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states, with Jerusalem under international administration. While the Jewish leaders accepted the plan, it was vehemently rejected by the Arab leaders who saw it as a violation of their rights. With the UN Partition Plan, the stage was set for a clash that would shape the Middle East for decades to come. The year 1948 marked a turning point in the Israel-Palestine conflict. In the aftermath of World War II, tensions between Arab Palestinians and Jewish immigrants escalated. This culminated in the Arab-Israeli War of 1948, often referred to as the War of Independence by Israelis or the Nakba, meaning catastrophe by Palestinians. The war began following the United Nations Partition Plan to divide Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states. The plan was accepted by the Jewish leaders but rejected by the Arab leaders and the Palestinian Arabs. On May 14, 1948, David Ben-Gurion, the head of the Jewish Agency, declared the establishment of a Jewish state in Eretz Israel, to be known as the State of Israel. The conflict that ensued was fierce and bloody. 5 Arab nations, Egypt, Jordan, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon, invaded the newly formed Israel. By the end of the war, Israel had not only defended its existence, but also expanded its territory. This war had profound implications. It led to the creation of a sovereign Jewish state for the first time in 2,000 years. However, the war also marked the beginning of a long and painful chapter for Palestinians. An estimated 700,000 Palestinians were either expelled from their homes or fled the fighting, becoming refugees. The aftermath of the 1948 war was marked by a mass displacement of people. The Palestinian refugees found themselves in a state of limbo, with many ending up in refugee camps in neighboring Arab countries or in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. Their plight has been a contentious issue ever since, with generations of Palestinians growing up in refugee camps, their futures uncertain. The 1948 war also set a precedent for the future. The establishment of Israel and the displacement of the Palestinian people became the nucleus around which subsequent conflicts revolved. The 1948 war set the tone for a future marred by conflict and displacement. The period post-1948 witnessed several significant developments that further complicated the Israel-Palestine conflict. A pivotal moment came in 1967 with the Six-Day War. In a preemptive strike against neighboring Arab states, Israel seized control of the Gaza Strip and the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan, and the Golan Heights from Syria, dramatically altering the geopolitical landscape. Following this, the Palestine Liberation Organization, or PLO, gained prominence. Formed in the early 60s, the PLO aimed to establish an independent state of Palestine. It was a beacon of hope for many Palestinians, although its methods, including acts of violence, sparked international controversy. Then came the First Intifada in the late 80s, a Palestinian uprising against Israeli occupation. It was marked by civil disobedience, general strikes, boycotts, graffiti, and stone-throwing protests. The world watched as images of stone-throwing Palestinian youths facing off against heavily armed Israeli soldiers became emblematic of the struggle. In the early 90s, the Oslo Accords marked a hopeful moment. Israel and the PLO formally recognized each other, and the accords aimed to create a Palestinian interim self-government in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. However, the optimism was short-lived, and the peace process eventually stalled. In the early 21st century, another wave of violence, known as the Second Intifada, erupted. It was more violent and left thousands dead on both sides. Recent years have seen contentious issues over Jerusalem and Israeli settlements further inflame tensions. Israel's decision to declare Jerusalem its capital and the ongoing expansion of Israeli settlements in the West Bank are seen as major roadblocks to peace. These developments have left deep scars on the Israeli-Palestinian relations, making resolution increasingly elusive. The narrative continues to unfold as the world watches, hopes, and waits for a lasting peace. Among the many tragedies of the Israel-Palestine conflict, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza stands out. With a population of nearly 2 million people crammed into a space of just 140 square miles, the Gaza Strip is one of the most densely populated regions in the world. Imagine a city the size of Detroit, but squeezed into a space just over twice the size of Manhattan. That's the reality for the people of Gaza. A blockade imposed by Israel and Egypt since 2007 has led to a severe shortage of basic necessities. The availability of clean water is scarce, with 95% of the water supply unfit for human consumption. Electricity is a luxury, with power cuts extending up to 20 hours a day. The healthcare system, already strained under the blockade, is on the verge of collapse. Hospitals lack basic medical supplies, and patients with critical conditions often cannot receive the necessary treatment. The COVID-19 pandemic has further exacerbated the healthcare crisis. Education too has been deeply affected. Schools are overcrowded, with classes often having over 50 students. The constant threat of conflict means that many children suffer from psychological trauma, affecting their ability to learn and grow. But perhaps the most heartbreaking aspect of this crisis is its impact on children. Half of Gaza's population is under the age of 18. These children have grown up knowing only conflict, their lives shaped by violence and deprivation. They bear witness to bombings, destruction, and death, experiences that no child should ever have to endure. The international community has a responsibility to address this crisis. It's not just about politics or territory. It's about human lives, human dignity. It's about 2 million people who are suffering on a daily basis, their lives hanging in the balance. The people of Gaza, especially the children, bear the brunt of this drawn-out conflict. Their resilience in the face of adversity is a testament to the human spirit, but they should not have to endure such hardships. It is time for the world to stand up and take notice, to work towards a solution that will bring peace and prosperity to this troubled region. The Israel-Palestine conflict, while complex and deeply rooted, is not beyond resolution. The path to peace, though winding and fraught with obstacles, begins with dialogue. Unyielding in its importance, dialogue serves as the bridge between divided hearts, fostering understanding and building trust. Equally vital is the role of mutual respect. Without it, the bridge crumbles, the dialogue ends. Respect for sovereignty, for human rights, for the shared history and the shared pain is the cornerstone of any lasting peace agreement. But this is not just a matter for Israel and Palestine alone. The international community plays an integral role in promoting peace. Through diplomatic intervention, humanitarian aid, and consistent calls for justice, the world can help tip the scales towards resolution. It's high time to change the narrative from one of conflict and despair to one of peace and hope, for the sake of all those affected by this enduring conflict.